So there you go. The deployment is complete. Let's click on Go to Resource. Okay, so that's the Enterprise Backup Recovery Services vault we got. And as we scroll down to the bottom, we got an option to backup. So that's the Getting Started guide for backups. And there are two places where you should be focusing on in the Recovery Services vault for backups. One is the backups under the Getting Started section, and the second one is Protected Items, and there you got backup items as well. Now, if you click on Backup under Getting Started, it may be asking for where your workloads are running. What do you want to backup? So if your workloads are running on Azure, then you got to select Azure. But as you see, they got other options as well, like Azure Stack and on-premise. Azure Stack is a service offering from Azure that will let you build private clouds. So if you have used Azure Stack to build a private cloud, then this might be the right bet for you. But if you got workloads running on your premise, probably on a VMware environment or Hyper-V, then you got to select on premises. The next option we have is what do you want to backup? What kind of data do you want to backup? Are they files and folders, Hyper-V virtual machines, VMware virtual machines, and they got lots of other options right here. In this case, let's go ahead and select Azure here under where your workloads are running, and then you will have the options to either select a virtual machine, an Azure file share, which is currently in preview, and then an SQL server in an Azure virtual machine. Now, the first option and the second option are infrastructure as a service, whereas this one is looking at your storage account. So if you're using file shares in your storage account, you will be choosing that one, but keep in mind that it's not in production yet, it is in preview. Now when I click on backup after selecting Azure file share, it should be going and looking at my storage accounts. Do I have any storage accounts? If yes, it's going to then show up on this list. I have to click on it and then move on to the next steps where I need to select the file share in that storage account. But one thing that I want to show you is what happens if you select on-premise. Do I need an agent? Well, let's see. Now I'll go ahead and select on-premises here and then choose files and folders under this section and then click on prepare infrastructure. This is where I need to download the Mars agent. Microsoft Recovery Services agent is nothing but Mars. So I'll click on that and then it will prompt me for a download, and there you go. It's there in my download manager, downloading things for me. But what's also important is the vault credentials. And I can download the vault credentials by just checking this and then clicking on download. So when you install the Mars agent on your machine, it will then ask for the vault credentials which you got to select. And then you will schedule the backup. And once the backups are scheduled, you can backup jobs page to monitor the backups. And we'll take a look at that in a minute. But the objective is to tell you that this is where you can download the Mars agent from. And you also need to have the vault credentials in place. By default, the Mars agent is downloaded in your downloads folder. So when the installer completes, a pop-up asking if you want to run the installer or open the folder may pop up. So you don't need to install the agent yet because you may want to take the agent to the virtual machine or the physical server on your premise and then install it. And during the installation, like I said, you may need the vault credentials to be mapped to the Mars agent. One thing to keep in mind is that if your administrator in your organization has already downloaded the Mars agent and kept it somewhere on the file server, make sure that that's the latest one. You need to go to the Microsoft website, identify what is the latest Mars agent, and then check if the one in the file server is the right one. At this point, I'll go to the virtual machine section and create a virtual machine. And then once the virtual machine is created, I will install the Mars agent on that virtual machine. I'm just simulating an on-premise infrastructure because I do not have an on-premise infrastructure. So I'm just simulating an environment where I will have the Mars agent installed on the virtual machine in Azure. Well, it doesn't matter where the virtual machine is, the Mars agent still would be effective to take your backup securely and effectively. But just for demonstration purposes, I will have the VM created in some time and then connect to it. Let's continue with the remainder of this installation in the next lesson.